Everyone, welcome to our event. This event is brought to you by DataTalksClub, which is a community of people who love data. Typically, I have a slide here, but I thought I'd just skip it. So like the video, subscribe. We have an amazing Slack community. The link is in the description. So I'll just skip that part. But the important thing is, if you have any questions today to our guest, Ivan, there is a link, a pinned link in the live chat. Click on that link, ask your questions, and we will be covering these questions during the interview. And it's my big pleasure to invite Ivan again. Ivan was
Thanks.
here already, I don't remember, 2, 3 years ago, but it was a very lovely conversation. And then one day I was coming home from a gym, I think, and I was thinking NLP has changed so much over the
Oh yeah,
last years, and probably it would be nice to get somebody on our podcast where we can talk about how NLP changed. And the first person I thought about when thinking about this was you, Ivan, because you had this
yeah.
NLP. What was the name? Uh,
It's computational linguistics. That's what I studied, and it's kind of like NLP
yeah,
thing. Oh yeah, and I
but
have
the repo, it's like
GitHub
awesome
repo.
NLP.
Yeah, NLP Pendect. It's basically like
Exactly.
a list of all things NLP.
So
Uh,
usually people just call these projects awesome something like awesome
yeah,
X, but you decided to call it differently, right? And it was,
yeah.
can you say it again? What's the name?
Pendect. It's NLP Pendect. It's on my GitHub. If you search for my name,
Yeah.
you
What
will
does it
find it.
mean? Pandect?
It's like I think it's an old Greek for encyclopedia. So
Ah,
just a
okay. And
fun
you
play
had
on
these
the word.
Greek letters all over the place, right?
Yes, yes, yes. I just wanted to make something different to like
Yes,
awesome
makes
lists
sense.
because there are so many awesome lists.
And
Yeah.
with time, you got promoted. You started working as an engineering manager, and I think this is what the podcast we had was about,
Yeah.
right? Getting from like individual contributor to an engineering manager. Anyways, I reached out to you thinking whether you can talk about NLP, but then I
Mm.
realized there is something more that we can talk about,
Yeah.
which
Yeah.
is now everyone is obsessed, myself included, with all this generative AI and what it can do to help us. But I keep hearing from people that expectations from the team members and also from
Mm.
managers because of that are growing. And I thought, Ivan, you
Mm.
would be the best speaker to talk about that. So here we are talking about this. So
Nice.
and it's very nice to have you back.
Yeah, happy to be here. Thanks for inviting me. It's yeah, there's a lot to talk about, right? I
Yeah.
think also we kind of planned this like maybe a month or two ago, and I
Yeah.
think it's like a light year since
Yeah.
then. So
All
many
right.
things have
Yes.
changed. It's good.
But I need to formally introduce you, right?
Yes,
So
let's do
I'll
it.
say, so hi everyone. So Ivan is a senior engineering manager at Personio, leading multiple teams in the identity and access management domain. I am. So every time I see this I am three letters, I have PTSD from my time,
Oh no.
like working in a
Yeah.
corporation and dealing with all this I am stuff in
Yes.
AWS. Yeah, fun times. Well, it's a very important thing. So previously, Van served as a data science and engineering manager at TrustU, where he led NLP and infrastructure groups to optimize massive ETL and ML pipelines. And with a master's in computational linguistics from LMU Munich and background in CDTM, I have no idea what is that. Uh, Ivan bridges the gap between deep technical NLP research and senior leadership. So, can you tell us what CDTM is?
Oh yeah, yeah. That's actually part of technical university in Munich.
Okay.
It's a technical leadership, technical management degree that I
I
got. So it's like
see.
a
I see.
additional thing. Yeah. So yeah, I
Okay.
studied computational linguistics and at the same time doing it's like an MBA, but more like engineering specific.
Hmm. Are you still based in Munich?
Yeah, yeah. I'm still in Munich. Yeah.
Okay, I'll be in Munich in a couple of weeks. Would be
Ah,
nice to meet.
nice, nice,
Oh,
nice.
okay.
Yeah. Thanks for the
So,
intro. Yeah,
mhm.
thanks a lot. Yeah, just sort of I've worked a lot in AI before. I mean, my master thesis was on the transformer model. I was doing some tweaks to it way back when it first released. Yeah, but then I moved a bit to a different area, right? But I think you cannot escape AI, even in IAM, you still have, MCPs now, right? So that's
Hmm.
authentication for AI agents. That's there. And then obviously everyone is now using AI for so many things. So yeah.
Hmm.
So yeah, we can talk a bit about how it's going on now, like industry adoption of AI. I'm talking to a lot of people working in different orgs of different sizes, trying to understand what's happening. And yeah, as I said, like it's a lot. It's
Hmm.
if you
Yes.
look at the news, like every week something new comes up, from security breaches to crazy IPOs and whatnot.
Hmm. Yes,
uh,
we'll definitely talk about all that,
yeah,
but I'm really curious to know more about, I mean, I already know a few things about you, but maybe for our guests, you
sure.
can tell us about your career journey so far. We briefly touched it when I
Mhm,
was talking to you about your biography so far, but
mhm.
maybe you can give us some more proper introduction of what you have done and how you ended up doing what you do right now.
Oh yeah, sure. Yeah, as I mentioned, I've studied computational linguistics, which is basically data science and sort of NLP based. Then I was working for a while as a data engineer, building ETL pipelines. People will remember Hadoop, Spark, and stuff like that. So that was a lot of fun back then. Then sort of moved
Having
more into
goosebumps.
yeah, you
Hearing
remember
Hadoop.
how fun it was to do
Yeah.
and build those ETL pipelines.
Hmm.
Yeah, doing then data science specifically. I was doing sentiment analysis, summarization, and a few other things in NLP. So I worked on a multilingual system. We supported like 20 languages back then. So that was quite interesting. Working a lot with Asian languages as well. So NLP for Asian Arabic languages is super complex. Yeah, and then kind of moved on more into technical leadership, started working with different kinds of teams. And then a great opportunity came up to move into something more security focused. So always was interested in that, and been 5 years I've been working in identity and access management space, doing access rights and login. Yeah, and as I said, now it all comes back to AI again. Now AI agents need access right checks. Now AI agents need proper MCP authentication, so on and so forth. So there's no matter where you work now, there's no escaping AI, I would guess.
Yes, especially now for developers, right? Because
Oh yeah.
I went to a friend recently with my son. I have a son,
Hmm.
and my son is like other kids. He is very inventive. So
Hmm.
he has a pair of pants, and there was a hole on this, and he fixed it with a scotch
Nice.
tape. Right, so he just put scotch tape on the pants,
Nice, nice.
and then it was the fix. And then I saw, okay, you are growing up to be a developer, right?
I
We
bet you.
developers like, these kind of patches.
Nice, nice.
And he was like, no, no, no,
Uh,
like I don't want to be a developer. And then we were at my friend's, and my friend said that actually developer is kind of endangered species right now, right? Because with all the AI stuff, and my
yeah.
son said he wants to work as a mechanic, like with
Uh-huh, uh-huh.
gears and stuff,
Yeah.
and it seems to be like a safer job these days, right? What do you think about this? Like,
Oh man,
are developers going to be needed like in five
that's
years?
an interesting one. I think like end of last year, that was like a take. We're gonna, uh, chill and AI will do the work for us. But
Hmm.
I think it's completely different, right? If you talk to people working in the industry right now, we actually have more work than we had before. We now have to manage AI agents,
Hmm.
put everything they produce together. And then what's also happening in the industry is that now that you have these AI helpers, you're also work a lot in parallel on things, right? As maybe before that, you had like one work stream, focus, flow, and work on that. But now you try to focus on one thing, and then in the background, 10 things are happening because your AI agents are doing something. And then you actually need to go back and be a bit of a, even as a software engineer, you need to do a bit of management now, but you're managing
Hmm.
AI agents basically instead of people.
Hmm. Now, for you,
So
is
yeah,
it something you're used to? I guess when you were an engineering manager, you had to switch contexts
oh
all the
yeah,
time.
yeah, exactly. For me, I mean, engineering managers, that's what we do, but I think for engineers,
Yes.
that's a new kind of
Very new.
a change, right? A bit. And so, yeah, it also takes time for engineers to get into that flow. And then it
Hmm.
also, we need to give everyone enough time to experiment because there's just so much to learn, even for engineers, because there's so many new contexts and so many new things, right? So we went from like basic prompt engineering now talking about context engineering, talking about teaching AI agents to be effective, to use less tokens, whatever, whatnot. There are just so many things everyone needs to figure out right now, and there's a lot to learn. And again, as I mentioned, things are changing almost
Hmm.
all the time, right?
Hmm.
Uh,
Yeah, and so you mentioned Hadoop, right? So probably you remember all days
yeah.
where everyone was doing things differently.
Oh,
But over
yes.
time, we kind of converged, we as industry, we converged to using Spark, and nobody was writing like MapReduce jobs anymore. Now
Yeah.
people don't use Spark anymore, so it's considered legacy. What I'm trying to say is like maybe right now things like, okay, how do we
Oh,
teach our
yeah.
agents to be more effective and use less context, well, fewer tokens? This is like, early days of Hadoop where people were thinking
Hmm.
like, okay, how do we uh I don't know, do MapReduce in a way that
Yeah.
we can actually
Yeah.
manage this complexity. But over time, things became easier and easier, and all we needed to do was to write a Spark job, and Spark would create all these MapReduce things itself. We
Mm.
wouldn't need to think about this. So do you think this is where we are also going with AI?
Probably. And I think sort of bigger companies that have a bit more budget are maybe more like have a headway because they have a bit more time and can. So like there's a big decision for companies now. Do I pay quite a bit for ready-made models, or
Hmm.
do we start doing something local, right? And so some smaller companies would need a lot of time to ramp up, right? They need to set something up, set up some local models, some sort of orchestration around it. And so um, that takes a lot of time. And then bigger companies, they can sort of go in, okay, let's pay for a subscription. It's expensive at the start, but everyone can jump right in, right? So, you're using Claude, Codex, Cursor, whatever. It's much easier than, waiting for your infra team to set something up with, I don't know, Quen or DeepSeek or whatever, right?
Hmm.
And so a lot of these bigger companies are like really pushing now. And I think a lot of standards will come out of that. And you can kind of see that already, right? Big companies are starting to share more what they're doing right, and we're kind of looking at them. I think a good example is Amazon, right? They had their problems in December where they tried something, AI does everything, and then it backfired to some extent, and now they changed the policy. Now AI code needs to be reviewed by a senior engineer. These big companies try out these massive experiments, and they kind of are in the forefront of,
Hmm.
giving us the guidelines to some extent. Yeah, but then also it's on all of us to, keep experimenting,
Hmm.
and things will be changing probably as well.
So do you think software engineering is a safe career choice for kids these days?
I'm pretty sure, yeah.
Okay.
There's just so much work. It's actually interesting. I have some friends who are freelancers. Their business is booming
Okay.
because everyone wipe coded something and then it doesn't scale, it doesn't work, and they just have so much work. I mean, my friend who's a freelancer says never had that much work in their life.
Okay.
So,
So for us, it's good, right? Because the code that AI generates is,
uh,
we all know, is sloppy, doesn't scale,
mm,
and there are many problems with that. When engineers use it, I think we as
mm,
engineers, we tend to produce code that is, at least I want to think this way,
yeah,
that
yeah,
the code we produce through agents is probably more scalable. I don't know how true it
yeah.
is that.
I think there's a lot like I think we kind of went from this idea of AI slop to now figuring out how to actually through mainly context engineering for AI agents to make actually like really good output, right? So if you give all the right context and if you have everything lined up for AI agents or the model that you use, the quality is actually pretty good, but you need to invest a lot of time to build that context, to maintain it, and you need to do some pre-work, right? So maybe like make sure your code documentation is actually next in the repo, not in some Google Doc or whatever, right? Right. So there's a lot of work to be done, and I think there's a shift now where we're moving away from this idea that AI does sloppy work. AI is actually doing pretty good work now if you invest time into making sure it can actually do the work, right? And that costs time, and it actually the output is pretty good after that. But then again, you still need to manage all of that, right? And then, as I mentioned, many things in parallel are running. You need to manage that as well. You need to constantly sort of maintain that. And then I feel like also AI cannot do everything yet either, right? So AI is pretty good at fixing bugs, doing migrations, fixing tech debt, but sort of building something from scratch as a POC is great, but then you still need to deep dive into you either go and spend hundreds of agents to fix all of that and then manage that, or you actually just do it yourself, probably within the same amount of time, right? So that's the trade-off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sometimes there are cases where I just need to stop the agent and go
Yeah,
and check the
just
code
do it
myself.
yourself.
And I would
Yeah.
just find a few files, delete them all, and say, okay, now re-implement. Like everything
Mhm.
is deleted. Don't even try to check the Git history. Now we need to re-implement it, and this is how we should do this.
Yeah.
And then I explain like almost line by line. And then now after that it works.
Mhm.
But these cases are, I must say, uh, more rare now these days,
Mhm.
where I need to,
Mhm.
nuke the code base and say, now you need to
Yeah.
rewrite this part from scratch.
Yeah, nice. I mean, it also depends on the org setup, right? If you work in a larger org where there are just many microservices, then
Hmm.
it AI can get that context also faster than you and help you contribute
Yeah.
outside of your domain, right? But yeah, if you're working just on one repo
Hmm.
or you're building your own project, then yeah, it's pretty easy
Hmm.
to handle as well.
Yeah. What do you do as a senior manager?
Good question. Yeah, you're asking manager what they do. Yeah.
Oh,
Now
you
there's
manage managers, right?
not right now. Not right now. It
Hmm.
depends. It changed a bit. I mostly work with more senior people on
Hmm.
staff engineers and technical leads. We're basically, I do some stuff hands-on as well. Mainly, like I took over some data analytics for my team because we want to understand the data we get as well, and then basically work on sort of. What we're doing on company level as well to some extent, what are we building, and then how my team can support.
Hmm.
And then there's sort of hands-on work as well for the features that we have, building new
Hmm.
features.
Okay.
But
The reason I ask this question is not
yeah.
to, put a manager in an uncomfortable position and try to make them explain what they do. Right? I mean, I also was a manager, and then like, what do you do? And it's like at the end of the day, you're
Hmm.
like, what did I do today? Right?
Yeah.
Uh,
Context
yeah.
switching, right? We constantly context switch.
Well, so the reason I had this question
Yeah,
is I
yeah.
wanted to lead with this question to another question is how much
Hmm.
hands-on work you do now
Mm-hmm.
is, I don't
Oh
know,
yeah.
everyone is talking about December last year as that time when agents became useful. For me, I
Mhm.
started using them earlier. So for me, December was just a usual month. But still,
Yeah.
like, well, let's take December, right? So half a year ago
Mm-hmm.
now compared to, I don't know, before, is your work different? Do you do more hands-on
Yeah.
stuff?
Oh yeah. Depends, right? I think smaller things, yes. And that's kind of what I hear from the industry as well now. You saw it back 2 years ago, and like everyone tells you for 2 years, there's no capacity to fix it. So
Hmm.
you just go ahead and do yourself now, right? You can
Hmm.
spin up AI agents and fix that and release it. So yeah, I've been doing a lot of that as well. And there's with that, there's an interesting thing developing. Like, uh, should everyone be sort of contributing code now, right? So any role,
Hmm.
and I think yes, to an extent, if it's possible, if the sort of the company setup allows for that, right? Interesting thing that happened is Now when people actually try that, they find out that writing code is just like one of the 10 things you need to actually do to push something to production, right? So AI agent can code something for you, but then tests fail, CI/CD fails, rollout breaks, something breaks, right? And that's where actually most of the complexity is, right? So
Hmm.
I've seen some companies realize that, and then you have two options, right? You either teach everyone then these sort of all of the concepts, not just coding, but how sort of be able to fix CI/CD, be able to fix tests, where to get that context, right? Or you just say, like I think what Amazon did, right? A senior engineer needs to review, and nothing goes to production if
Hmm.
if no engineer actually reviews it, right?
Hmm.
Uh,
So maybe there is also middle ground, right? So
yeah.
then everyone can deploy their code, but to some sort of sandboxed environment.
Mm, mm.
And then like
Yeah.
there, you don't need any approval from senior engineers, but if it's like production, then
Mhm.
of course you need like a real experienced person to take a look at this and approve or reject.
That's true. And that also generates more work for engineers, right? We were talking about like
Hmm.
the workload grows, and the workload also grows because now you're getting MRs
Hmm.
and you have to help, right? And you have to not just review, but sometimes just really, invest the time to help, so that next time when the person contributes, can do
Hmm.
it on their own, right?
Hmm.
Uh, and that's the upfront investment that,
Hmm.
if you want to allow that in your org, you need to
Hmm.
set off some time for that upfront
Hmm.
investment, I would say.
So right now I have two questions. The first
Yeah.
question, how do you actually do this? But then before that, so there is this guy who created OpenClaw. You know this
Hmm. Hmm.
from Vienna. What's his name?
Yeah. Oh, I forgot the name, but I know who you're talking
Yeah,
about.
but like every time I open Twitter, I see
Yeah.
this person.
Yeah.
And he's a kind of humble bragging, or I don't know how to call this, but he's saying like, "Look, I spent like 1 million on tokens today, or something like
Oh
this,
yeah. Oh yeah.
closing all these merge requests, right?" But okay, yes, his scale is unprecedented, and other people don't do this. But the
Hmm.
thing is, like, he has a process
Hmm. Hmm.
which there are agents that are working on these
Yeah.
PRs.
Yeah.
Right, so the agents are closing the PRs, the agents
Yeah.
are reviewing the PRs, the agents are rejecting PRs, and these PRs are created by other agents, right? So it's a very interesting situation that,
Hmm.
and at
Hmm.
least for his project, that he needs to work on, right? So, but he has a setup for that.
Hmm. Hmm.
And coming back to where we started and why I thought about this, you mentioned that we need to educate people and have the
Yeah.
proper setup for that. Yes, we create
Exactly.
more work
Yeah.
for engineers, but how do we manage this work, right? So this person found a way to manage
Hmm.
the work,
Hmm.
right, for with OpenClaw and like all these codex
Yeah.
agents that he is using. But like in your case, and maybe people you talk to, like what is the typical setup to
Hmm.
make it possible for developers to actually bear with this load?
Hmm. Yeah. Good question. I think again, it's important, I think, to make the first of all to make the LLMs or AI agents that you use actually useful, right? So you need to go in and do context engineering, right? Give them access to everything they need, um, have clear instructions, right? Because otherwise you're gonna be spending time on fixing stuff, right? You're wasting so much time on fixing stuff after the AI agent. So you need to spend time upfront. And then you can go level higher. Um, I see a lot of interesting setups that are open sourced where you have different types of agents, right? So you have there's a project on GitHub called three-man team. And so one person is a developer agent, the other one is a reviewer agent, and the third one is like a product agent, right? So reviewer, architect. So they all have like separate roles, right? So yeah, and one creates the code, the other one solely focuses on reviewing it, making sure it fits the architectural design, and the third one cross-checks it with product requirements and so on.
Mm.
And so that's just one example, right? And I think that's where we are now. We need to keep understanding how to make AI more efficient through these more elaborate setups, right? At the same time, making sure we don't overdo it and don't have like a huge memory problem in terms of like the AI forgets, context management, so on and so forth needs to be there. Yeah, so there's quite a lot. And then for like sort of on org level, I would say really what's important is you need the time to experiment, right? So if you're adopting AI, don't expect it to be like, immediately next week, everyone is using it, right? Everyone needs the time to experiment, play around with it, try different tools, try different setups, and then sort of eventually converge on something. Yeah, so there needs to be that support, right?
Why do you think it doesn't work this way that you just handle everyone a Claude Code subscription and they don't,
Yeah.
all of them don't start using it in a week? What's preventing them from using it? Why not
I mean, they
everyone
can
is
use
using it?
it, right? I think, will the output be useful, first of
Okay.
all? And then what will probably also happen is that everyone will start building their own plugins and things where
Hmm.
you could actually, unify that, right? You
Hmm.
can make sure everyone is converging on similar tools, similar plugins. Yeah, because then everyone wastes time building their own thing, and then they need to maintain it, right?
Hmm.
And then there's also varying quality. So someone did it better, the other one maybe has lower quality. So you need to actually, like, eventually, if you're using stuff like Cloud Code or whatever the setup, you need to work on unifying that and maybe creating like a general strategy for the company.
Hmm. So a more pragmatic or wise solution in this case would be to just get a few senior engineers and give
Mm.
them a task like, okay, now you use
Oh
this
yeah.
for a month, you figure out what kind of infrastructure we need in order to scale it to the entire company, right?
Hmm.
And then they go
Could be,
deeper
yeah.
into this, and then they come up with some sort of like not necessarily a platform, but the set of best practices, right? And it's unified.
Mm.
And then, oh, I come from like what I was doing before. I run an MLOps team.
Yeah.
Right, this is what we were always doing, right?
Yeah.
So we want to introduce a new technology. So now
Uh-huh.
we need to actually understand how people would use this technology, what kind of things they would need to on top of that, like not just, you lock yourself in a room for a
Yeah.
month and then you go out and say, okay, this is how you should use this. But you constantly talk to people and get their feedback and, improve. So probably this could be a way when it comes to using it
Yeah.
at organization.
Yeah, that's also true. That's also
Hmm.
true. I mean, yeah, there's just so many ways. And I think like um so many companies do it in different ways, right? That's what I
Hmm.
meant. Like these bigger orgs, they can experiment, and then you either wait for them to share how they did it and what actually worked, or you go in and experiment
Hmm.
yourself and see what happens.
Hmm.
Right?
And what's the role of a manager or a senior manager in this AI adoption?
I think it's basically that it's actually useful, right?
Hmm.
So first of all, making sure, again, what I mentioned before, there's sort of unified approach to it, right? So that we're not in a state where everyone builds their own thing on top of whatever LLM you're using, and then the whole team does stuff differently. It's more like unifying things, making sure the team is aligned, and then ideally also aligned with company direction and how that is set up, and using what the company is using as well. And then basically, I think for managers, it's is the I think that's a big question now. Like, is it actually useful, right? Is it
Hmm.
actually doing something? So how do you track that, right? So how do you check, are we actually bringing more value to customers? Are customers even noticing anything changed? And then I think for internal developer experience, that's what I meant before, is AI is good for fixing small things, tech debt, migrations. So you kind of then see where can you apply that, right? I'm pretty sure there is no team in the world that doesn't have a tech debt backlog.
Hmm.
So yeah, you see how you can apply it there. Can you start fixing some things there that you just never really had time for? Right. So yeah,
Hmm.
where is the usefulness of AI? You need to check that. You need to apply it in the right place, and then convert the
Hmm.
team and org to use the
Hmm.
same tools. Right?
How do we measure if it's useful or not? Because like there is a
Yeah.
story probably you also heard from
Right.
Uber, right? So they burned through
Yeah.
their entire year budget, and
Yeah.
now
Yeah.
they ask themselves like, was it actually useful?
Hmm.
And my understanding from what I read online that they couldn't give a satisfying
Answer. Yeah.
yes, right? So they okay, yeah, we kind of spent all this money, but like,
Hmm.
what did we do?
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's these big companies also they went the way of there's no limit.
Hmm.
Or even worse, there's a leaderboard.
All right, with
who
token
spends
consumption.
more tokens, right? And then people just, read stories online. People just run LLMs in like recurse, do some random stuff, right? Just to burn more tokens so that you look better on the leaderboard. That's horrible, right? And
Yes.
I think we're finally going away from that, right? That there was an experiment, a very expensive experiment for, Uber and the others. But I think kind of everyone realizes that now that was not a great idea. Uh, yeah, and so basically, how do you measure, right? I think that's hard. I mean, ideally, there's nothing you need to change. You should ideally already have measurements of, the quality of your product from customers, NPS or whatever you're tracking, quality of the satisfaction of like developer experience from engineers. I mean, we all should be tracking that ideally already. So if you already have all of that in place, then you actually should see the impact in those metrics, right?
Hmm.
But then the question is, how good are those metrics in your case, in your company? Are they measuring the right things? Yeah, but I would say, yeah, customer satisfaction, obviously, and then, a satisfaction of developer experience inside the
Hmm.
company.
And do we have actually because these coding agents on such scale is a relatively new thing, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
we didn't have everyone talking about using teams of agents a year ago, right? It
Mm.
started recently. Do we have actually enough data to say that, okay, we did this experiment and
Oh,
it
yeah.
led into the improvement on of NPS? And NPS is like Net Promoter Score, right?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Like, do we have enough
Mm.
data to actually say that? Or like maybe these experiments
Yeah.
don't need to be long running. So we
Hmm.
did
Hmm.
something in a week, we shipped a feature, customers are happy, and we continue shipping. Or maybe we should stop and think about things like, well, what's the like I don't know, what do you
Hmm.
think about this?
Yeah, that's a good one. I think like everyone is trying to figure out it now.
Hmm.
And so some companies are still in the mode where they, just let's throw money at it and
Hmm.
see what happens, right? And then for the others, for smaller ones, that's not an option, right? So they need to be
Yes.
more careful with that. They need to make sure, either they went and set up fully like some sort of local setup that they manage and tokens are cheaper for them, or they are really like checking what's the progress, what's the impact, and then adjusting accordingly, right?
Hmm.
And yeah, that's the thing. I think it's like I don't think there is a clear answer yet because we're still in that like hyper adoption modus of like everyone is in that mode right now,
Hmm.
right?
So you mentioned token consumption and
Yeah.
leaderboards, and this is best possible metric for that, was worst possible metric for that, sorry. It's like measuring the output of a developer in lines of code, right? We all know that it
Yeah.
doesn't work. But do you know any other metrics that works? Okay, at the end, yes,
Mhm. Mhm.
the only thing that matters is, I don't know, in case of businesses revenue, where the revenue is growing, how exactly you are affecting this revenue through some other proxy metrics, right? Like
Mhm. Mhm.
NPS is one of these metrics, and then the team satisfaction is another thing. Are there any other metrics that are, uh, let's say, closer to maybe this token consumption? Right?
Mhm.
So because like in order to measure how exactly you
Yeah.
affect the revenue, it's a long journey, right? So it's
Yes,
not
it will take a
we
while.
might not have enough data to do this. But there are some other
Mhm.
metrics that could be useful, like I don't know, number of pull requests
Right.
or number of merged pull requests or things like that. Which kind of metrics, like developer specific metrics, have you seen work better in practice than token consumption?
Good question. I think, we're kind of going back to the discussion of this like developer experience metrics, DORA,
Hmm.
and similar metrics, right? So you mentioned like MR throughput and so on. I'm also not very convinced those are so helpful. I think it really depends on what you're doing, what you're focusing on. So if you say you're gonna throw AI into fixing tech debt, then a good measure would be, I don't know, how long your CI/CD pipeline runs. How long does it take from creating an MR to actually releasing it, right? So are you actually improving that time? Is it faster? Is it better? Is there less code complexity now to deal with because AI fixed all the tech debt?
Hmm.
Hopefully, right?
Are there metrics to measure code complexity? I think there are, right?
There are quite a lot, but I haven't seen them used really in the
Yeah, because
industry.
I
I think
remember,
we're yeah,
yeah, when I was a developer, a Java developer, we had
yeah.
Sonar, and Sonar would
Yes,
out
yes.
would show some cryptic metrics, which I had no idea how they actually work. But like
Yeah.
when it goes down, it's like good job. I guess this is one
Yeah,
of those, right?
yeah. There's this ATS thing in Java where it measures complexity of code, but I've only seen it in research. I did
Hmm.
some research on that as well, but I've never really seen it used in industry. I think in the industry it's more like going back to the DORA metrics, right? So
Hmm.
MR
What is DORA?
throughput. I think it's a developer experience. It was like a few years ago, a research done by, I don't remember which company, probably ThoughtWorks, where they did research what are the best metrics to measure sort of output of code. And I think most of those metrics are like what you mentioned, like MR throughput, so how many MRs you get per week or whatever, and then measuring you literally create the MR and you measure from that time how long does it take until it lands with a customer, right? So it's a cycle metric. Basically, it
Hmm.
just tracks how long does it take for everything like test to run, the team to review the MR, how long it takes in CI/CD, how long it takes in delivery, canary releases, whatnot, and so you
Hmm.
measure, from start to finish.
Hmm.
It worst case it's like a week or two. Best case it's an hour, right? So,
Hmm.
and that's one of the metrics that I think we should
Okay.
be optimizing for
And
because nobody
number
wants
of
to wait.
regressions we had, like number of
Oh yeah,
bugs that are
yeah,
filed as a follow-up, that's also a part of
that's also true.
DORA, or
I think so. I think so. I mean,
I'm checking it right now, but it's a very long document. Maybe I should have asked ChatGPT. But there's
uh,
yeah, so the idea
yeah,
behind
failure
DORA
rate. You're right. Yeah.
is you want to have software delivery performance metrics, right? So
Yes. Yes.
how good your delivery pipeline is.
Yeah, exactly. So lead time, how long it takes
Hmm.
to prod. Then you mentioned this like failure rate. That's there
Hmm.
as well, right? So how often or how many bugs happen after that, right? So how much time do you need to spend on fixing stuff afterwards?
Hmm.
And that's an interesting one for AI
Uptime.
agents and uptime as well, right? But for AI agents, right, you deliver something. What's the failure rate of code generated by engineers versus failure rate of code generated
Right.
by AI agents? That's a good metric to track. So
Hmm.
I haven't
Yeah.
really thought about that, but as we were talking about that's a good
Hmm.
one. Yeah.
Hmm. But now with a, a lot of AI code being generated,
Mm,
we see, I don't know if it's correlation or
mm,
not, just correlation or
yeah.
causation. We don't know. But now with all these AI tools, many major services like GitHub,
Hmm.
uh, they experience a lot of outages, right?
Oh
So
yeah.
if you go to their status pages, you don't see this 99.9999% deal anymore. It's in the 90s, like it's, I don't know, in some cases it goes to like 80s
Yeah.
percentiles.
I saw that.
And I mean, for GitHub, they're in a very tricky situation right now
Mm,
because all these agents, where do they publish code? Of course, on
hmm.
GitHub.
Yeah.
Where all these CI, CD jobs run? On GitHub. Where do they store all these artifacts? On GitHub.
Yeah.
Of course, it's very tricky for them, right? But there are other providers. Like there was a story that the rsync maintainer discovered Cloud Code recently, and
Mm.
now, like with the newest release, like this thing stopped working, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. I mean, some companies just, it's a balance, right?
Mhm,
Some companies just want to go fast, right?
mhm,
And failure rate goes up, and but they still delivering new things. So I don't know. I don't know. I've seen that about GitHub, yes.
mhm,
But the same thing happened with Amazon, right? There were so many
mhm,
outages, and then now it's kind of under control. So maybe
mhm,
that's, GitHub enforces more code checks, and that helps. We'll see.
mhm. Okay. So
Yeah.
essentially, what I heard from you, you
Yeah.
repeated multiple times, is the big companies, they pave the way. So they experiment.
Yeah. Yeah.
They are really on the frontier of all these things, right? They have the money, they have the workforce, like they have the people, a
Mhm.
lot of
Yeah.
people, and they experiment, or sometimes they are forced to be a part of the experiment, like GitHub, I guess. Uh, and then what we can do, we as people who don't work in these big companies, we
Yeah.
can learn from them because usually this information is public, or
Yeah.
some of it,
Exactly. Yeah.
right?
Yeah. I think that's a good source. Yeah. So,
Hmm.
and thankfully they put out a lot of, you can read the postmortems as well,
Yeah.
and they put out some, blogs as well. So
Hmm.
it's interesting to see how that develops. Yeah. Um,
So let's say you join a new team and
mm,
your task is as a senior engineer manager to set up the have this framework, have these processes in
mm,
order for people to use AI as effectively as possible. How would you
yeah.
approach this? Let's say the company, the team
Yeah. Yeah.
does not use AI yet. I mean,
Yeah.
the individual developers, they are trying to use this, but there is no standard way of doing this.
Mm. I think the first thing I would do, and this is probably controversial, is to say, you have 2 weeks to do anything with AI. There is no
Hmm.
expectation to deliver anything. The expectation is that you experiment, learn tools, and then at the end of that 2 week, we run like a knowledge sharing, right?
Hmm.
So there should be no expectation that you actually build something because it's just so complex. Ideally, you do, but just give the team the space to try out things without fearing anything, right? So, oh, I need to build something in 2 weeks
Hmm.
and I have no clue how, right? So they at least start and they have that free time, and then what's important is continuous knowledge sharing, right? So
Hmm.
I mentioned this before. Some engineers will do it in one way, others in the other, and this is how it was also at the beginning. We all like learned things, and we all learn things differently. I don't know how that happened, right? We follow different people online. We read different blogs. We try different things. And so, talking to my engineers, they did stuff completely differently. They use completely different tools for like context management. I use a different tool just because I found it myself or someone recommended it to me. And then you need to work on converging, right? So you need
Hmm.
to work on knowledge sharing. And then ideally, you agree on one way of
Hmm.
using AI, if possible, with some,
Hmm. How
variation here
how
and
do
there. Yeah.
you do this knowledge sharing sessions? Is it like you just all get together in a room, everyone presents a demo, so then and
Yeah.
everyone knows
Uh,
what exactly you did in these 2 weeks?
Yeah, a demo or just like, yeah, exactly. Show what you learned, show the
Hmm.
tools,
Hmm.
and then have a conversation, right? So
Like what
people
you
will jump
liked, what
in.
you didn't like, what
Exactly.
could have been
Yeah, yeah,
better, like
yeah.
obstacles.
And then also like collect feedback. Like people will
Hmm.
say, oh, uh, I could have done the same thing at the same time myself without using AIs,
Hmm.
right?
Okay. So there are no
Collect feedback.
expectations for people to have like a deliverable at this point. Like the expectation is they just try it and they share what they have
Yeah,
built.
I would propose that. I think
Hmm.
that would work really well for the first like 2 weeks, and then maybe after that you can actually say, okay, now we have better understanding of it. Let's do a hackathon and actually build
Hmm.
something, right? So
Okay.
as a follow up on that, right?
So hackathon is like for a couple of days or?
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
Hmm. Okay. So then everyone builds a hackathon and then what? I mean,
All right.
participates in the hackathon and builds something. Or,
Build something, yeah, and then we'll see. It depends on the org again. If I mean, ideally, you build something that is part of the product, right? You build some new feature, and then you actually like you would test how close are you with the tools that you have to actually like pushing something that's not just a prototype, but something that can be delivered to customers, right? So that's a good measurement of are you using the right tools, right? So maybe you're using some LLM that's not good. Maybe you need to use a different one, or you use different ones already as a part of the experiment. And then you actually measure, what's the hackathon project output, right? This is just something that will never go to production. Then maybe you need to go back and check your tools, check what happened, or something that's working and hey, we're gonna release it after some cleanup to prod as well, right? And that's a good indicator. Oh, okay, the tooling is good, it's working, it's right fit for the team. The team figured out how to do it together as a team, and then sort of go with that.
You'll probably need a few iterations of that, right?
Yes, yeah, definitely.
And
Yeah,
after you iterate, what's the good state? The state we want to be eventually in?
the state we want to be is basically it's part of regular workflow, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it becomes the regular thing for the team to
Mm-hmm.
use the tools.
Mm-hmm.
And ideally, I mean, ideal outcome is that it becomes sort of invisible, right?
Mm-hmm.
Whereas you still produce code, it's still good quality code, but you might be able to produce a bit more depending on what you're using. But
Mm-hmm.
ideally, the quality shouldn't go down, right? That's what I
Mm-hmm.
mean was it should be invisible. The quality should stay. So you need to invest in that. But you're just using AI then.
Mm-hmm.
And then the trade-off of that is what we talked about is the workload of the whole team will then increase because there's more stuff to review. There's more stuff to manage. So I think there needs some work needs to be done then in terms of team processes, right? Do we change the team processes? Um, you know, how much throughput can we actually handle as a team, right? If someone
Mm-hmm.
does 10 PRs per week and that's just not sustainable for the team, then we need to scale down or
Mm-hmm.
scale up or whatever.
Mm-hmm. And then, yes, the goal is the tool is invisible. The code, the code we produce is still good quality.
Mm.
Maybe we will do a little bit more, but with this invisibility, there is one like asterisk
Hmm. Yeah.
that the cost, right? So then,
Yes,
as a company,
exactly.
you pay more, and sometimes it's a lot more. Like considering
Oh,
what happened
yes,
now
yes,
to
yes,
GitHub
yes.
Copilot.
Yeah.
So how do then you decide
Mm.
whether it's actually a thing worth keeping?
Mm. Mhm. I think that's sort of for every company to figure out their budget for this.
Mm-hmm.
And as I said, probably like set some limits as well.
Mm-hmm.
Or while, a good strategy would be, you pay for a subscription, but
Mm-hmm.
at the same time, your AI engineering team works on something local, fine-tuned for your
Mm-hmm.
org and less expensive, right? So I think that's a good
Mm-hmm.
good approach, right? We don't know, like what we've seen in the last half a year, the costs are just like go up, 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 up.
Yes.
The features go down, right? So like, I think Claude removed like from Mac subscription, the coding one or something like that. So like the features go down, the cost goes up.
Yeah.
And we don't know how far that cost will go because it's increasingly more expensive to
Yeah.
run those things, right?
And then another thing I wanted to ask you is the dependency, but I think you answered that because
Mm.
like as we start using it and incorporating in our flow, we become
Yeah.
dependent on the provider. And
Mm.
this happened to
True.
me personally. I got excited about Cloud Code so much, so I started
Yeah.
using it a lot. And then at some point, they had some problems, like it was a few months ago where you would hit the weekly limit in like one session or something.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then I was like, okay, what do I do now? Like, all my
Yeah.
workflow is, I'm
Yeah.
so dependent on this tool right now. So
And
what do I
that's
do? And
that's
then I
the
started thinking about like, okay, there's Codex, there's other providers. How do I
mm,
make
mm.
my work independent? Like, how do I not depend on the tool?
Yeah.
And this is just, I'm a solo, how to say,
Yeah.
solo developer. But as
Mhm.
a team, you have risks, a lot more risks. Like, so I'm flexible. I can just go ditch Cloud and start using Codex, right? Of course,
Yeah.
it will
Yeah.
require some readjustment for me, but I'm more flexible as a single person.
Mm, mm.
But when you talk about a team of people, or when you talk about like an entire organization, you cannot
Yeah.
just, tell everyone, hey, today we use Codex. And then in one week you say, I know
We
you
change.
actually we go back to Cloud, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
how like is the answer having this AI engineering team working on the local solution, or
Maybe
to
because
do something else.
what's happened, like for me, I had the same problem. Like I've been playing around with this stuff, and so what I'm doing myself and what others I see do is that for like day-to-day stuff, you use open source models, right? And there are
Hmm.
so many open source models, and there are many tools you can use for that. And then when you like converge on something, you want to actually build something like production ready, then you go and pay, you get your
Hmm.
subscription and use it. And I don't know if that's the answer for big orgs, right? But I would assume so. If you want to save on costs, you need to, in parallel, start building something yourself
Hmm.
or something that's just cheaper. You could even use like AWS Bedrock, and then you can use open
Hmm.
source models there. So the orchestration layer is there, so it's easier to do something yourself. And it's much, much cheaper. And again, we don't know how more expensive the stuff will get. That
Hmm.
we're paying for.
Yeah.
But I think it's like with any tool. It's not just AI. We have the same problems with other tools. How do you manage your dependency? You basically, what you can build in agnostic way, you build in agnostic way. So let's
Hmm.
say you're building the Claude MD or whatever. Ideally, it's hopefully would be reusable in
Hmm.
another LLM,
Yes.
right? You build it in a way that's not
Yeah.
specific to Claude or whatever you're
Hmm.
using.
So yeah, in my case, the instruction I have in CloudMD is go read agents.md. That's the only
Okay.
line in
Yeah.
all my CloudMD files. Um, so now, another question for you about juniors. So now we know that
Oh yeah.
getting hired as a junior is much more difficult compared
Mhm.
to a few years ago, right? And AI is one of the reasons, right? So now you can get your senior engineer a Cloud Code subscription, and
Mhm.
then the senior engineer would produce, ideally, when we figure these things out, would be more effective. So now
Mhm.
there is
Oh
no
yeah.
reason for us to hire juniors.
Mhm.
But then eventually
Yeah.
these engineers, they will, some will decide to leave their
Yes.
software engineering job and focus on, I don't know, carpentry.
Yeah.
Some become managers. Like eventually, we need fresh
Yes.
blood.
Yes.
So
Yes.
the companies probably also realize, but I don't see a big uptick in junior
Yeah.
positions
That's so.
still. So
I
why do you think we don't hire juniors anymore? And
yeah.
what to do for juniors? Like how can they get hired?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, that's a big problem, I think. And I always reminds me of there are people who like a few people who can maintain like prolog systems, and they
Hmm.
get brought out from retirement just to do that for a lot of cash. I hope that doesn't happen to us, right? So it's important to get juniors to onboard them into software engineering, and then there's also an interesting thing happening right now. You kind of jokingly see people saying um, it's cheaper to hire a junior engineer than run Claude or Codex, right? Because the
I
costs
saw these
are
tweets, yeah.
higher than what you would pay an actual human, right? Again, we don't know how far the costs will go up, but there might be a tipping point where you just say, all right, this is too expensive. Let's just hire people again.
Hmm.
Yeah, but it's important. I think it's really important. I think every company needs to think about that. Start hiring juniors. One thing I can say about my current company, Personio, and it's public info, we started like a drive to hire junior engineers.
Hmm.
So we have open positions now, which is great. And I think other companies need to think about that as well, because that knowledge will go away. And I think people still have this thought that AI is there and it can do the work, but AI doesn't have the context, right? You need someone to
Hmm.
provide the context. You need someone to fix the problems. You need someone to
Hmm.
orchestrate AI. And then, if in 20 years we all retire, who's going to do the job, right?
Hmm. Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
And another thing I was thinking about, we or senior engineers, so we learned coding when we didn't have
Oh,
AI
yeah.
systems, right? So now,
Yes,
like, even if, like, I hope it
that's
doesn't
true.
happen, but like now, if I don't have a Cloud Code subscription, I
Mm.
will not like it. But if I'm forced, like if the circumstances force me, I'll be able to go and modify the code, update the code. I still have the
Yeah.
skills. They are rusty now
Oh, yeah.
compared to before, right? Because I don't do this anymore. I just give instructions, but still I still have the skills, right? So I have some muscle memory
Mm.
versus juniors who never did this at the scale as older
Yeah.
generation. So what are the risks of hiring juniors with this kind of setup right now? Like, should we think
Oh
about this
yeah.
now, or we just should hire juniors anyways and then see what happens?
I mean, I think we should. Like, I think people also don't use current LLM models enough to learn, right?
Hmm.
For example, I love doing that, right? Instead of just coding something, oh, I ask like a prompt, explain everything in detail. What are the steps, right? So I learn a lot through that. 10 years ago, I'd go to Stack Overflow, post there, be called an idiot
Hmm.
first, and then someone would actually answer it.
It's a part of the experience, right? You have to live through this.
Exactly. Yeah, but now you can just go and ask an LLM for it, and I think the other problem is to what extent will LLM keep giving you the right answers, right? We have
Hmm.
this idea of model collapse as well going around, right? So at one point there will be not enough training data
Hmm.
for LLMs. So to what extent will they be helpful here? I don't know.
Hmm.
But I think just because of that, it's easier to start as a junior, right?
Hmm.
Because you no longer have to, how we did it. I would come up to some more senior person and say, I need help, sit down
Hmm.
next to them and just
Yes.
bug them, right? But now you can just, open Codex or whatever and start asking 100 questions there, right?
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
it's easier to onboard yourself with LLMs present, I would
And this
say.
is a comment that I just see right now. So
Yeah,
there is a theory that juniors catch up faster with AI.
yeah,
So this is exactly your point, right? So now,
yeah, yeah,
and it also gives more kind of breathe room for senior engineers who
exactly.
now
Yeah,
can actually do deep focus on what they do and not to be bugged by people constantly interrupting them.
yeah,
Um,
yeah. So yeah, just sort of bottom line, I think we should
mhm,
keep hiring juniors.
mhm.
But let's see what happens. It's going so fast. We don't know how the
Do you
industry will.
have time for one more question?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
Okay, so there's a question about people who want to get to start a career in AI engineering as a software engineer. Maybe you have some recommendations for them, like what's in your opinion? Um, you probably as a manager, you saw
Yeah,
people making these transitions. So what you would recommend to them right now in 2026?
good. I think it depends. I think we still have quite a broad spectrum of AI roles, right? We still have the sort of regular MLOps, right? Someone needs to orchestrate everything, build like if your company is doing reg, so like retrieval, then someone needs to build that. That's basically like we had ETL pipelines, now it's reg. So you can go that way, right? You can learn the tools there, and the good thing is there are a lot of open source tools. Like there's Llama Index, LangChain, Haystack, and many others. So you can just go and build a toy project yourself. Um, of course, if you have a GPU, that's great. You can rent something online. And then I feel like there's another role forming in the industry where it's more you're focusing on context building, right? So you're
Hmm.
actually the one writing very efficient instructions. You're building an infrastructure around re-engineering prompts, re-engineering context, how it's given to the models. So that's another way you can go. And I'm pretty sure that will stay for a while as well, right? You
Hmm.
can learn the best practices there. And again, you can experiment locally. There are just so many tools right now. I'm really happy to see open source is still alive and
Hmm.
well in AI.
It's catching up.
Yeah, exactly. It's catching up. There's amazing tools like anything LLM. It's on
Hmm.
GitHub. You can plug in any LLM model there, play around with all the steps you need. So yeah,
Hmm.
this.
And this context building and context engineering, you mentioned it so many times, it feels like
Yeah.
I need to find somebody who would talk about this thing for an episode.
It's pretty new. I think
Yeah.
like I've heard the term of context engineering like maybe a month ago, right?
Hmm.
So it's kind of developing now
Hmm.
because there's this idea I've heard, right? We're going from, we assumed AI is just gonna keep generating slop. but that's not a problem with the model. It's the problem with orchestration around the model, right?
Hmm.
So you need to spend more time improving everything around the model, prompts, better context. And
Hmm.
that's where context engineering comes into play.
Hmm.
And if you have everything set up well, then the power of your LLM is much, much higher and the
Hmm.
quality is better.
And there is a comment about specification-driven development, and I think this
Oh,
could
yeah.
be exactly that, right? So then
Exactly.
you give
Yeah, that's part of it.
context, you give your agent the context how you should approach a problem. Like there is a, let's say, a product manager who is scoping or grooming the
Mm,
problem, right? So there is a software engineer who is working on implementing this. There is a tester who is testing this, and then again, PM accepting or rejecting this thing. At least this is
mm.
the setup I arrived at, and this is what the setup I use. And you mentioned this too,
Right.
so I think this is we are as
We're
industry
probably
kind
talking
of
about the
going.
same thing, right? It's
Yes,
just, different people call it different names,
yes,
or
yeah.
it's part of the whole thing, right? It's,
Yeah.
building blocks of proper context
Hmm.
engineering that is still being figured out, right? I think I
Hmm.
mentioned this before. We're kind of in this research state where we
Hmm.
don't know yet
Hmm.
what's working best.
Yeah, and to me, it's also about giving your agents ways to um, understand your code base faster,
Mm,
right? I
mm.
don't have an answer for
Yes,
that, but this is
yes.
how I understand it. Like all these agents.md files, things like that. So you want to say, instead of
Hmm.
doing like grep on the entire code base, like if you need to make a change here, you go here,
Yes.
right? Or
Yeah,
maybe
yeah,
you have
yeah.
index on top of your code base. I think Cursor is doing that.
Exactly, yeah. That's really helpful. And at the same time, also dangerous in terms of costs, right? You need to
Hmm.
be very careful then. It needs to
Yeah.
be very precise, right? So that because every single time you do a prompt, LLM will load that context and
Hmm.
spend
Right.
tons of
Right.
tokens on processing it, right?
Okay, Ivan, thanks a lot. Pleasure to talk to you as
Nice.
always. So thanks for staying a bit longer with us
Yeah,
for four
sure.
minutes.
Happy to.
Really nice talking to you. I really enjoyed this conversation, and thanks everyone for joining us today too and asking questions. So it was really nice.
Same here. Thanks a lot for inviting me.
Yeah,
Yeah,
thanks for being here.
happy to
So
be here.
I'll drop you a line because maybe we can
Nice.
meet in Munich.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
Okay. So then speak soon. Bye.
Nice. Thanks.